Welcome back to the Alchemical Life podcast, a podcast that redefines transformation to help athletes prevent injury, improve performance, and achieve more in both sport and life. It is your host, Abigail Crowe, and gosh dang it, I think I'm starting to get a little bit more comfortable on here. So, all that being said, if it's your first time, welcome, hi, hello. And if it is not your first time, then you know that we have been on a series about recovery, especially for athletic populations, primarily endurance athletes. But if you're not an endurance athlete, then you can still benefit from this information. And if you missed the first two episodes, go back, listen, put it in 1.5 speed. I'll see you in like 30 minutes. Brief summary overview before we get into the third topic today. But today, or last week, we talked about sleep, the importance of sleep for recovery, not just go get 7 to 9 hours, see you later, really actually discussing why we need to focus on getting good sleep, the nuances of sleep and what occurs when we do sleep and what happens when we don't, and how that affects our performance. In week 1, we talked about what recovery is, why it matters. Do we really care about it? Does recovery look like rest? Are rest and recovery two different things? And also we discussed the symptoms of under recovery. So discovering if you are potentially experiencing not just you aren't recovering, but you're actually under recovered for your training sessions and how that could potentially be impeding on performance. Today, we are talking about nutrition. We are going to go into all of the macronutrients, and where I don't want to get too in the weeds with it, I want it to be digestible and applicable. So I want you guys to be able to actually leave this podcast with real information on what the macronutrients are and what they do to help with our performance and how we can realistically apply we can add, these into our diets or apply some of these concepts into our training to help us improve performance. Today, we're going to talk about carbohydrates, we're going to talk about fats, we're going to talk about proteins, which are the 3 macronutrients in the body, and we are also going to talk about electrolytes because I think that is a fundamental component to our training to help performance, and if we do not consume electrolytes, it can hurt our performance. Also, you'll be hearing me drink a protein shake during this because I needed one post-workout. You can't be mad. I'm walking the walk. I actually did not just do I have protein in here. I have protein, I have my carbohydrates in here, and I have electrolytes. And I will say that this LMNT that I have is not it mixing with the flavors. But we do what we got to do to get what we need in. So, there's some drinking ASMR for you. That all being said, we're going to start by talking about carbohydrates today. Carbohydrates are it's the only non-essential macronutrient, and there's a lot of polarization around the concept of carbohydrates. But if you're an athlete, I would consider an essential macronutrient in the body. I would venture to say that carbohydrates, protein, and fats are all essential macronutrients if you are an athlete. And this is because it helps improve output during all training zones. So whether it's threshold, tempo, base work, it doesn't matter. A heavy lift, a not so intense lift, just flow rolling, really hard sparring, it's going to help improve output. Why? Because the body breaks down the food that we consume, and this is to create energy, into glucose to be converted to ATP, which is the usable form of energy in our body to do all of the activities that we do in our day. If you are consuming carbohydrates are more quickly, efficiently, readily broken down into glucose to be converted to ATP. So when you're exercising and you need quicker energy, you need energy quickly to do the activity you want to do well, then carbohydrates are essential for you. They're the best macronutrient to consume to help aid that. That's why we have pre and post carbohydrate intake suggestions for athletic populations, which we'll get into. But Fats can do this. Protein can do this, although it is very much not ideal if you're using protein as an energy source. Fats can do this, and they actually do this in either higher trained populations at lower intensity exercise, or it can also be used in long duration exercise. There's something also called the fat burning zone, and I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you. I'm going to kind of lay it out and then go back. There's also something called the fat burning zone, which is just this snake oil salesman hit piece, in my opinion, on why you should work out at lower intensities because you're going to burn more fat. This is true, especially, again, in well-trained populations. Your body's going to be more efficient at when it utilizes those carbohydrates. It wants to use carbohydrates for when it's really needed, so during higher intensity activities. But although it is burning more fat at those lower intensities, over time, the higher intensity exercise, you're going to end up building more muscle, burning more calories in the long run because you're putting in more effort and there's higher output. And post-exercise, you have this thing called post-exercise excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, EPOC, which is continued calorie burn post-exercise, which is going to be higher in higher intensity activities. All this to say is the fat burning zone is something that technically exists, but do not let this keep you from doing real work in your training sessions, because across time, the higher intensity exercise and the high intensity lifting and sparring, all of this is necessary in improving performance and overall output and calorie burn and all of those things. So again, also for my endurance athletes who are like, wait, I can only do intense activity. No, still do your base work, bro. still do your base work, still have your easy lifts, all of those things are necessary. But I just wanted to clear that up on the fat burning zone and the myth of the fat burning zone. For well-trained populations, you are going to, upon exercise, probably burn some carbohydrate, but primarily burn fats as your energy source, because when activity gets harder, effort gets higher, you will start actually utilizing those carbohydrates that are stored in your muscle and your liver and converting them into glucose to be converted to ATP, and those will be used for your exercise. Fats will also be utilized in long duration exercise, which we will talk about when we get into fats. But carbohydrates, again, are the best, quickest, most efficient way to convert the food that we consume, digest it, absorb it, and use it for ATP to produce energy. It's also it's really helpful for glycogen replenishment post-exercise. Ideally, post-exercise, we have a higher degree of insulin sensitivity, and we also have this thing called mTOR that's ready. We'll get into that when we talk about protein, to help you recover, build muscle post-exercise, or increase protein synthesis post-exercise. And it's going to be really important to consume some carbohydrates post-exercise, because your body is essentially just like in a place that is optimal for taking in those carbohydrates and using them exactly how the body needs them to be used. So having carbohydrates is great for not just pre-workout, but also post-workout, replenishing the energy that we've lost during our training session. It also helps aid in protein synthesis as well, which we're going to get into protein synthesis when we talk about proteins. You'll notice that there's a little overlap, and it's because all macronutrients really do overlap. One kind of helps with the other. So that's why I think that they're all essential, but just my opinion. Overall, carbohydrate recommendations is pre-workout having 0.5 to 2 grams per pound of body weight. Post-workout having 0.5 to 0.7 grams per pound per body weight. And then intra-workout, if your workout is longer than an hour in duration, after that initial hour of exercise, having 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrate per half hour. And sucrose is the recommended carbohydrate of choice when it comes to intra-workout carbohydrate supplementation. You can look at sucrose supplements like those Goos, Tailwind, Power Gel, Honey Stinger Chews, things like that. Just make sure you look on the label to see if there's other forms of carbohydrate mixes in there, like maltodextrins and fructose and all that good stuff. The next macronutrient we're talking about is protein, which I'm going to take a sip of right now. I have protein shake on my lips. Okay. So protein consumption. Why is it important? Why does it matter? It helps aid in protein synthesis post-exercise. So when you exercise, you have this thing called mTOR that gets stimulated. And mTOR is just like the central governor of muscle proteins. They're the central regulator of muscle protein synthesis, which leucine activates. And we're not going to get into leucine, we're going to stick to protein today, you guys. Ideally, you have muscle protein synthesis greater than muscle protein breakdown, because that also occurs post-exercise. That's why you want to have protein post-exercise. That mTOR pathway is just like ready to go, ready to suck in the protein that you consume and get it to work in muscle protein synthesis. And all of this helps with muscle growth. It's going to help improve recovery by reducing soreness, make you stronger. It's going to help fight sickness by improving immune function, because you've got these things like lymphocytes, macrophages, antibodies are all made up of proteins, enzymes, they're made up of proteins that are going to help with immune response. All of this will help you perform better. So not just is protein important post-workout, but you need to make sure that you're consuming enough in your day, and you're consuming it every day, because it's not stored in the body. So you need to consume it daily. Ideally, you're consuming 1 gram per pound of body weight per day. If you are somebody who is on a weight loss journey and you want to make sure that you have enough macronutrients, so carbohydrates and fats, you want to have enough calories dedicated to those things, you can also do protein grams of lean body mass. But if you are already at a lower body weight or you are deep into a cut, I would really recommend keeping that protein intake 1 gram per pound of body weight and not going into lean body mass. Okay. Now, post-workout, right? We're talking, okay, mTOR's up, whatever this freaking thing is that Abigail's talking about. All I know is there's this thing that's sensitive. It's going to help with muscle protein synthesis. It's going to help me gain muscle. It's going to help prevent any kind of muscle protein breakdown. It's going to make me stronger, better, healthier, all this good stuff. How much do I need, and when do I need to take it? Ideally, you're going to have 20 to 30 grams, 30 minutes to 2 hours post-exercise. This is going to be more important if you are fasted before. So if you're a morning workout person and or even a late morning workout person, but you do not consume any food before you work out, it's going to be really important that you get that 30 grams, probably on the higher end, potentially even higher than that. I really recommend if you're deep in a fast, 30 to 50 grams of protein post-exercise. It's going to be more important that you get it in that window, though, that 30-minute to 2-hour window. If you are not fasted, the window's longer. It's a little bit more flexible. You've had protein before your workout. It's okay. But still, in an ideal situation, you're still consuming 20 to 30 grams, 30 minutes to 2 hours post-training session. If you want to be really nitpicky, all my nitpicky peeps, all my physique peeps, or just the people that are really obsessed with meal timing and nutrient timing, then having a whey protein post-workout so that you have quicker absorption, and having a casein protein at night, which is like an extended release protein absorption protein source. So that when you do wake up, you're fasted, but you're not really fasted. You're not in a state of potential muscle protein breakdown outmatching muscle protein synthesis when you're done with your training session. So casein at night, whey protein post-workout. This is also oh my God, huge disclaimer, you guys. If you want to change your diet, if you have any kind of pre-existing health conditions, any questions, please consult with a nutritionist, a registered dietitian, a physician. Like, I am a personal trainer. I can give some advice. I'm going to give you advice. I've taken courses. I've taken classes in my actual major in exercise physiology on this stuff. I've helped people with it. I've gone through these things myself. I am not a nutritionist, registered dietitian, and I'm not a physician. So consult with one before you add any of these things into your diet. Okay, that being said, make sure that whenever you're adding things like casein or whey protein, this is just assuming that you have no issues already with having dairy in your diet, because the whey protein is going to have some dairy in it. Moving on to fats. Fats is also an essential macronutrient. I think they're all essential macronutrients. I'm going to say it again and again and again. But fats is also an essential macronutrient, and it's really important for hormone balance. So like estrogen, testosterone, cortisol, they're all synthesized from cholesterol, which is a fat. It also is important in fat-soluble vitamin absorption. So vitamin A, D, E, K, those are our fat-soluble vitamins. They help regulate hormones in our body. It aids with satiety along with protein. Both of them help with satiety. So it's going to help if you are trying to stay lean, especially if your sport involves maintaining a certain weight, like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, that kind of thing. It helps prevent inflammation, right? The omega-3s and 6s, mostly omega-3s, are going to help with reducing inflammation because chronic inflammation is not ideal. It reduces performance. It can disrupt hormone production. It's going to contribute to brain fog, and it's just not ideal when it comes to performing optimally. It's also used as an energy source, as we were talking about when I was going over carbohydrates, for highly trained populations during lower intensity exercise. Because why I say highly trained populations is because highly trained populations are going to be more efficient at when they are using carbohydrates or fats for energy, because their body has just gotten better at figuring out when, how do I word this? Their bodies are more highly regulated in terms of energy efficiency. And so because they are more efficient at utilizing energy at lower intensities, they're going to rely on those fats, which take a little bit longer to break down, so that when they do have to kick up in intensity or in a longer duration activity, there's a rate of perceived exertion that's higher. Their heart rate tends to begin to increase. They can use those carbohydrates that have been stored for energy. This is not some kind of switch where you're just using all fats and then you use all carbs. There's a little bit of both happening at once, but in any case, there's going to be a percentage distribution that is a little bit more geared toward utilizing fats for energy versus utilizing carbohydrates for energy. And in long duration activity, fats will be used more, and also in lower intensity activities, fats are going to be used more. So what should the consumption be for fats? Recommended 20 to 45% of daily intake should come from fats. On the higher end, like you just enjoy fats, or maybe you're in a bulk, you have a little bit more calories that you can dedicate to fats, then you could be more in the 35 to 45% range. If you are in a calorie deficit, or you just really, really like consuming carbohydrates for your daily intake for energy source, then you can be in the 20 to 30% range, but it is really important that you do not dip below 20% because that can disrupt hormone production, and that will definitely reduce performance. Most people, I would say, can comfortably sit in the 30 to 35% daily range for overall calories coming from fats. And the last topic of the day, we're kind of breezing through this. I'm feeling good about this. We're going to talk about electrolytes. Electrolytes are really crucial for water regulation in the body and in our cells, and for any metabolic activity, including exercise. And it helps regulate our pH balance during exercise. It helps regulate our pH balance anyways, but really important during exercise because we produce some metabolic waste byproducts that can dysregulate our pH balance. So that's the major reason why we should be consuming electrolytes in our training session, or before or after our training session. But it also it improves muscular coordination and nerve function, right? Electrolytes are used in all motor outputs. And so, for example, when you're dehydrated, you start cramping or you have poor coordination. I don't know if you are listening to this and you train in any kind of martial art or sport that requires a lot of thinking, basketball, football, soccer. Your cognitive performance tends to drop or decrease. I have personally noticed this if you are entering into a state of dehydration or underhydration. So when you're dehydrated, you'll cramp. I had on my Utah half marathon, so it was my 21K through the mountains of Utah. I was definitely dehydrated, and every time that I would go to do the barbed wire crawl, my adductors would cramp, which, by the way, if you've never had an adductor cramp, it's absolutely freaking horrific. I was definitely dehydrated on that race, and I was trying to stick to normal hydration protocols. It was just so dang hot, and I literally couldn't consume enough fluids at that time to remain hydrated because my output was so high and it was so hot. And if I consumed any more water, I would have had this crazy bolus in my stomach that I just wouldn't have been able to move. So electrolytes are important. I went off on a little bit of a tailspin. They recommend 2.2 to 3.2 milliliters per pound body weight, 4 hours or less pre-workout. You don't want to have it too close to your training session or else you're going to have to pee all the time. If you have more than 3 pounds plus lost in water during your training session, this is when we can start seeing real cognitive and motor performance decline. So that cramping, poor motor function, poor cognitive function, all of that can happen when you are dehydrated, and you will see it when it reflected in your weight. If you're 3+ pounds of body weight lost, you are in a dehydrated state. So post-exercise, it's important to replace 150% of the weight you've lost from exercise in water in milliliters. Okay. I do not know what else I have to say about... okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about the effects, how to know you're dehydrated. If your urine's dark yellow, you're thirsty, you're definitely dehydrated. If you have brain fog, if you have cramping, impaired motor function, cognitive performance, we've talked about, increased heart rate, headaches, the classic. I have a headache. Babe, are you dehydrated? Yeah, you actually might be. So all of those are symptoms of dehydration, and symptoms of or effects of hydration don't just include, obviously, good solid performance and regulation of all of our metabolic activity in our body as we exercise, but also improved insulin sensitivity, which can help take in glucose efficiently. It increases our metabolic rate. It can decrease inflammation and promote lipolysis, which all helps increase fat metabolism. So it helps with body composition as well. It increases satiety, so there's that as well. And if you are an athlete that is exercising, especially an endurance athlete or doing multiple aerobic bouts of exercise in your week, then you need to make sure that daily electrolyte consumption is happening. I lift 3 times a week. I would not consider myself necessarily an endurance athlete, but I am a highly aerobic athlete, and so I train jiu-jitsu at least 3 times a week. I'm running or doing some form of conditioning at least 3 times a week, and then I'm also lifting 3 times a week. So I am consuming at least one. I consume LMNT every single day, sometimes 2, depending on how many training sessions I have during the day or how much I'm sweating during the day or how intense my conditioning session is that day. So whatever that is for you, that's going to be something that you'll experiment with. There are a couple of recommendations for overall electrolyte consumption, and it actually matches the ratios of an LMNT pretty well. So pre-workout having something of, I believe it's 1,150 milligrams of sodium, which, and then it's something like 70 milligrams of potassium and 25 milligrams of magnesium. Don't entirely quote me on that. That's roughly the ratio that you want pre-workout, or to also replenish post-training session, depending on when your training session is. But an LMNT is 1,060 and 20, I believe, milligrams of sodium, potassium, and magnesium, respectively. So that's why I really enjoy LMNT. I think the supplement is awesome in terms of ratios for proper electrolyte consumption pre or post training session. That being said, I think I'm going to cut it for today. You guys, thank you all for hanging in here. Hopefully this was fairly concise information that is actually digestible. I'm so punny. And something that you can take with you and use. Hopefully it's also shed some light on the importance of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. You get an idea as to what macronutrients are, what electrolytes are, why they are important, and what happens if we do not have enough of them or we don't supplement with them properly throughout our day. Next week, we're going to get into adaptation and efficiency in sport, what happens when we get really good at what we do, why we need to do more, but why we need to focus on not doing too much, and how to do too much of how to start implementing things where we're doing enough of the right things and not too much of the wrong things. So what things we could be doing less of, what things we could be doing more of, and then potentially, maybe we'll get into this next week, maybe the week after, continue into next steps, what to do, how to actually apply these things to your life if you feel under-recovered or you're totally off with nutrition and sleep and you're doing too much and, whatever. We'll go into next steps and how to add more into your week for all of my crazy neurotic people like myself who want to keep doing active things but do not want to overtrain. So we'll talk about how to do more in your week without impeding on recovery and actually potentially helping with recovery. So thank you for listening. I will see you next week, and let me know if you have any questions. Follow me on Instagram at Alchemical Training, or you can direct message, follow me on Instagram at abigail.crowe. Those are my 2 handles, and I do respond to both of them. So if you have questions or just want to engage with me or want to correct me on shit that I get wrong, please feel free to reach out via those things. If I know you personally, call me, text me, reach me, beat me. Kim Possible. Peace out. Bye.